We're all about the Archers, and we are thrilled to welcome to the podcast the one and only Tim Bentinck, who plays David Archer. Tim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much indeed. It's very, very lovely to be here, and I'm very flattered that you've asked me.
We are so excited. We have many, many questions. And the first one, I was surprised to discover that not only have you been playing David for 42 years, you weren't the first person to play David Archer.
No, I wasn't. No, his name's David Karivic. And I found out recently that, because when I did the audition for it, I thought it was because of my incredible acting prowess that got me the part. And it wasn't until about something like 3 years ago, I was listening to a radio thing and it said, and here we've got an archive thing of, David Archer. And I listened and I went, wow, God, I sounded young and different then. That's really, hang on, that's not me. And he sounds just like me. And I realized the reason I got the part was because I was a voice match. And it was nothing to do with my, being a brilliant actor at all. It was just simply that I sounded like the previous guy. Such a letdown. Sorry, David, if you're watching this, thanks.
He just started it off for you. It's fine.
Yeah,
no
you got
problem.
the ball rolling.
So, with your first job before the Archers and everything, your first job was on a farm, and you still use that visualization you were saying for Brookfield today in the area, which I think is an amazing kind of background. The fact that you've always had your hand in these little things, grew up, born on a sheep farm, I think it was, wasn't it? Yeah. And you worked on a farm and everything, and then you won. Well, you were runner-up for the BBC Radio Repertory Company. And do you think it was always written in the stars that you were going to be in the Archers and an archer?
I don't know. Well, I was born on a sheep station in Tasmania. It was not a sheep farm; it was a sheep station. There's a big difference. And then, yes, when I was a child, I worked on farms. We lived in a little village called Potton End in Hertfordshire, and I used to go and work on the local farm there, so I knew about that. And then my pa, who we were talking previously about him being an ad man, working for J. Walter Thompson, making TV commercials, he gave all that all up and went down to live the good life, really, and because he saw global famine coming up, and he wanted to be the guy who had some food, and so he always put his money where his mouth was. So they set off down to Devon and created a 10-acre organic small holding, and we turned it. Me and my pa and my wife Judy, and his wife Jenny, my stepmother, turned it from a stables into this a small holding. So it had a house cow, it had ducks and geese and turkeys and a little grey Ferguson tractor that did all the work for him. So I've got first-hand experience of it. And for a while, I don't know if there's anybody else, but that was the thing that I found. My fellow actors in the Archers were all doing it, just saying the words, and we all do our research, and so you look it up and find out, but actually having first-hand kind of hands-on experience, I think I was one of the few. So it does help, to actually visualize all that.
Tim, can we talk about David and David being happy? Because I do worry about the joy for David. He doesn't seem to have a lot of friends. He's just surrounded by family. When is David at his happiest?
Well, it's not my doing, these things get written for me. And, he always did. He seems, and this thing about being grumpy, I don't know where that's come from. David was never grumpy. He was always full of, he was always the guy with the bad jokes, always one for bad jokes. And the other thing that I slightly miss is old Charles Collingwood, Brian Aldridge. We had a very good relationship. And he would tell me, he was the guy who would come to David to talk about his innermost feelings. And I think the new scriptwriters don't know that. And I need to remind them that that's where Brian comes for solace and comfort. Because David is, he's not stupid. He's a farmer, but he's not thick, he's not stupid. And this idea of being grumpy, I don't know where it came from. He was always a very happy chap. And he loves his wife, he's absolutely devoted to Ruth. And he just, he gets on with it, I think, is one of the things. Stephen Fry described David as being the steady rock that you would turn to. He's always the guy who you would know, he's honest. That's one of the things. He's completely and utterly straight and completely and utterly honest. That's what I like about him.
And that's what we like about him too. He is just always there. It's great. Good to get that relationship back, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
that would be really good.
Yeah,
I think we need to get that back. Now Jenny's gone, he can get back with you and have those chats. That would be really special.
Yeah,
definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, well, I've visited the studios at the Mailbox and seen the cardboard cutout of you and Felicity next to each other, who plays Ruth.
Ever young.
I love it. I've had a selfie with it, so living the dream.
Sure.
But she is so much shorter than you. So when you've been recording, sharing a microphone, that must have been quite difficult. So
No, the joke is always that it's my archer's stance. I have to splay my legs, literally. I have to stand with legs akimbo in order to be at the same height as Felicity, because she's, I think, 5'2" and I'm 6'3". So there's a good foot difference between the two of us. That's why we don't like people looking at us when we're recording. When we got to the Mailbox, they put in this enormous great window for the public to look in at us acting, and all of us just went no, and so they drew the curtains. At great expense that window was put in, but it's never been used for anybody to look in. It's there, but if you open the curtains, but nobody ever does, because we know it's radio. That's the whole point about radio, is that you don't look like what you're projecting, what you're conveying, in the way that you do when you're in vision. And you do all sorts of things with your body. I remember Graham Seed used to contort himself into strange positions. He was always like that, in order to kind of get a certain voice. So yeah, we don't like being looked at. Get very self-conscious.
Is there anything that you do to sort of snap into the part of David? Is there a word or a feeling that you think of to get yourself in that part, or is it just it's a second skin now after all this time?
It kind of is now, yeah. If you're doing parts that you're unfamiliar with, then you do that, and if you're doing an accent that then you kind of do a bit of a warm up. But 42 years. Just at the moment the green light goes on, it's David. And I used to think that I was putting on a bit of a different voice for him when I was younger, but I was a bit posher when I was younger. I went to Harrow, and I was quite far back, and I had to get rid of that in a way to be an actor, because you can't do that all the time. And I've always been good at accents. That's why I joined up, really, is to do accents and different people. That's what I love about acting, is when you're somebody completely different. And David is in some ways similar, because I have worked on farms and I do know that kind of life and things, but at the same time we're very, very different, because David he's not an actor and he can't do accents and be other people, and so in that sense we are different. I bring the part of me that has experienced the same stuff that David has to the part, but things like running a farm, I'm practical, hands-on, but the idea of doing the accounts and knowing anything about the real ins and outs of the business of being a farmer, which is a huge thing. I don't know that. I haven't had first-hand experience of that at all, especially because it was an organic farm, so it wasn't. It was a different farm completely than Brookfield. So no, I just turn up and say the lines.
You've had quite a big background in musical theatre. So has David ever sang in the Archers, or if he had a chance, would he go for it and be in the panto if they resurrected Pirates of Penzance or anything like that?
Well, he has. I think he has sung here and there at kind of village dues. And the other thing which filled me with hope was that during COVID, during lockdown, there was a bit where he said, "I'm going to get my guitar down from the attic." And
yes, I remember.
You see, I'm a guitarist, so and I've been writing songs all my life. And I thought, great, at last, David is finally going to come out as, as a really hot guitarist. And, we talked about that for about one episode, and then it was never heard of again. That was it, got buried. So, script writers, if you're listening, David can play the guitar, okay? He hasn't had any practice for the last 40 years. But he can.
Tim, talking about the guitar and songs, I seem to recall going to see you on tour, and you did a song that included about Nigel falling off the roof.
Oh, yeah. Did you see my one-man show?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. Oh, thank you for coming out. That was very sweet of you.
Well, no.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was, you can't not have that gag and just say, I pushed him. I've always said, and that's because people say, you pushed him off the roof, didn't you? And I go, actually, yes, I did. Fill their fantasies a bit.
Oh, so that's your view.
Well, no, I mean, of course I didn't. And it was, I felt very sorry, very, very sorry for Graham. I mean, and also we missed Nigel Pargeter. It was, that was a decision that was made by them on high. And, I think most of us now, well, we all thought it was a shame at the time. And I think that, as the years go by and people go, we miss Nigel Pargeter, and he is missed. There are lots of people in the Archers, who used to be there who aren't there anymore. Well, let's not go down that route, but there are quite a few people who just suddenly aren't there anymore, and it's sad.
Yeah, fair enough.
Definitely.
Thank you.
I do think you need to all resurrect your one man, one woman shows and just do a little day festival of all these shows, because I missed out on all of these the first time round. And I think we just need to have a whole day festival.
Well, it was basically me getting it out of my system. I've always wanted to stand on stage and sing my songs, and I wrote a one man show in order for me to be able to do that, and I kind of hung it around the Archers. But actually, it was for me to kind of get off on actually being a rock musician manqué. But I look back on it and I go, I should have had a director, because it was over long. It was 2 hours, and it shouldn't have been 2 hours. It was me. It was self-indulgent to the max. But I've got it out of my system now, and I'm never doing it again. It had its moments. There were fun bits in it, but I think it went on. I think it went on a bit. There was one time when I did it up in Norfolk, and the thing with the show was called Love Your Chocolates, which is because this was Charles Collingwood who came up with the title. There's a story which was absolutely true, that after my father died, and we had the vicar round, like they do, to come round and talk about him, and because he'd never met my father, and mainly because Pa was an atheist, so but he liked churches, and so he wanted to have a service in a church. So he met the vicar. It was a lovely, lovely man. And as he was leaving, he got to the door and he said, before I go, can I just say, and usually when people say, can I just say, they go on to say, can I just say, I've been listening to the Archers for all my life. So I was prepared for that. And I'm going, yeah, okay, that's fine. Fine, because it means a lot to people. So I'm always nice. He said, can I just say, my wife and I love your chocolates. Bentinck's Bittermints, our annual favourite treat. So I told this story to Charles, and Charles said, that's your title. So the show is called Love Your Chocolates, which of course doesn't mean anything to anybody at all. They're meant to be coming on to see David Archer, and the show's called Love Your Chocolates. What's that about? So it's totally Collingwood's fault that, I didn't get the massive attendances that I might have done. And anyway, so I told this during my one-man show. I told this story, why it's called Love Your Chocolates, and went on to explain it quite well. And right at the end of the show, and I was tidying up and putting everything back in the car, and this old boy come up to me and he said, "So where is your chocolate factory then?"
No.
Just hadn't got it. It's got 2 hours and you haven't got it, mate.
Never mind. Now, let's talk about the Archers, of which David Archer is obviously a crucial part. Is David Archer slightly concerned that it might be renamed the Aldridges at the moment, because the focus is very much on them?
Well, it could be called the Aldridges. It could, for a long time it could have been called the Grundys, which is what a lot of people wanted it to be called, renamed the Grundys. And yeah, it could be all kinds of people. I mean, the thing about the Archers is it doesn't necessarily feature, the Archers all the time. It goes off and features different families, and so yeah. But I don't think you've actually changed. I think changing the title might be a mistake. I think it fits. I think it stays there. We'll be back.
Watch this space.
Watch this.
So Susan and Eddie have their chili, and Jill obviously had her fruitcake with innuendos. What do you think David and Ruth's special food is?
You're very keen on biscuits.
Yes.
So I'm prepared for this, and the answer to your question is chocolate hobnobs.
Boom! There you go, Tim. Thank you.
As we know, you take one chocolate hobnob or even one Jaffa cake, and you've got to eat the whole packet.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if
you know,
that's it. That's it. No, chocolate hobnobs, and then dipping them in very quickly in a cup of tea.
Tim, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the best way to eat a chocolate hobnob is straight from the freezer.
Oh.
Game changer.
Really?
Just saying, yeah.
Oh, so it's like an ice cream kind of thing.
It's just taste. It increases the taste sensation by 200%. So.
Oh boy, this is fantastic. I shall be a convert to that then.
Can we just talk about memorable scenes? Because when we think of David Archer, we all have different things that come to mind. But when you reflect back on, crikey, 42 years, what are the big moments for you?
Well, I think Ruth's putative affair with Sam comes pretty high, really, in over the 42 years, because she nearly left. And this brings us back to food. Don't forget, is that it was spaghetti bolognese that saved our marriage, because she rings. If you remember, she goes off to have a tryst with Sam in a hotel, and she's feeling a bit guilty, and on the way she rings David on the mobile phone, and he's absolutely loving and gorgeous, and says, "I'm just making spaghetti bolognese for the children." And that is the thing that she goes, I can't do it. So spag bowl saved our marriage.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that whole storyline, a lot of people said, we don't believe it, it's out of character, and I get that, but if you think about the number of times when, somebody who lives next door to the axe murderer says, it was so out of character, we couldn't believe it, he was such a nice person. And people do, people present as one thing, and actually underneath it are something else. And yes, it was out of character for her to fall in love, but it was really built up. I mean, this thing, it led up to it, and then David having a bit of an eye for...
Yes, for Sophie, was it? I was just going to say.
Yeah. But it wasn't on the same level at all. It was just, the point about that was that David, he's a simple soul, and he was being flattered. She was flirting with him, and just she was flirting with him. He wouldn't have done anything at all. He wouldn't have gone through with it, but he was flattered to be flirted with. And Ruth was sort of not being nice to him at the time, so he kind of, went with that a bit. And then it was so well written. It was about how relationships, can get really, really screwed up because people misunderstand or take things for granted, things like that. It was really clever. So it got to this point where it led up to, I don't know if you remember, there was a bit where she finally confesses to him that she was in love with Sam. And I've got the scene, in fact, it's on my website. It's the only clip from The Archers that I put up there because I thought it was good. Where he can't believe it. He can't believe it. The main thing, what was so clever about it, was that he thought for months and months that her breast cancer had returned, and that was why she was being weird. And so he was so loving and so terrified and so, genuinely loving and caring. And then she turns around and says, no, it's not the breast cancer, I'm in love with somebody else. I mean, it couldn't have hurt him worse. It could not have hurt him worse. It was a real slap, and he's never really, for my money, it's not reflected necessarily in the scripts, but underneath it all, he's never really got over that. I mean, in terms of does he trust her? Then she went off to Australia, and then there was a weird thing then, and that was a bit, and this, it's great from the writer's point of view to explore things like relationships that have gone on for decades, and are they still sound after all this time. I mean, Judy and I were coming up for our 45th wedding anniversary, and it's actually 50 years since we first met. And I'm very pleased to say, touch wood, I don't think that any of us are going anywhere. And we love each other even more every year, and we're lucky. We're really, really lucky. But lots of people with long-term relationships, that can fade, and it can not be as nice as it was before, and it can dry up and die, which is hugely sad. But the thing I've always thought about David is that he is soppy about her. He's soppy in love with her, and his greatest terror is that she should leave him, and he gets really scared about that. So there's things, that those things can be explored. I look forward to that.
Absolutely. Oh, it'd be another good avenue. You and Brian can have another chat about that one.
Yeah, exactly.
So, with all of your various bits of work that you've tried, obviously The Archers is your favourite, but out of all the other areas, so musician, musical theatre, film, TV, doing some of the adverts, helping out with that, inventions, what's been your favourite? Or are they all great because you've got so many? It keeps them all fresh and interesting.
I really do love filming. I really like being in front of a camera. I haven't been on stage for 8 years, and that was I did a play called Brexit at the Edinburgh Fringe, and before that I hadn't been on stage for 8 years. And I was in Brexit. I was playing the Prime Minister, so it was a lunchtime show, and it was an hour long, and I was on stage the entire time. And I was up in Edinburgh for 4 weeks, and I was away from home on my own, and I just find it scary now. I mean, I'm an old man, and it's a young man's game, this sort of thing. I mean, there are some actors who are thespians, who love it and go, that's it, that's all I can do is to be on stage and hone it every single night, and each night it's going to be a little bit different. And I get that, I totally get it. But for me, what I love is improv, and it's my favourite thing, is making it up. And one of the things about The Archers is you make it up on the spot, you make it up on the fly. You might read it through once, but essentially you're doing it for the first time and the last time. And the same thing with telly and films is that you learn your lines, you walk up on the set, and if it's a long-running series, you know the people. If it isn't, if you're a guest and you don't know them, and you know your lines, and you turn up and you do that part, and you do it maybe once or maybe twice or possibly 3 times, but that's it. Then you move on to the next one. And I love that invention. And when I was doing the play, when I was doing Brexit, and I was doing the rehearsal, and I came home, and Judy said to me, she said, I haven't seen you so happy for years. And that was because I was creating the part, because I was inventing, I was making it up, because it was a new play, and we were the first people to do it. And then I, did it, and we did the first night, and up in Edinburgh. Well, I did it a couple of times in London, and then up in Edinburgh. Wow, we're inventing it on the fly. And then, the audience reaction, and go, wow. And then after about, 4 or 5 nights, my attitude now is, okay, done that.
Yeah, next.
Done that, next. And you've got another 3.5 weeks to do it. You have to do it the same every night or similar every night. And I kind of go, and as I say, there are people, actors who that's what they do. And I did masses and masses of theatre when I was younger. Bristol Orbit Theatre School and lots of Fringe and then the West End and all that kind of a thing. And I did love it, but I got to the point where I don't want to dry. I don't want to dry on stage, and I get more and more as you get older, remembering all those lines. Surreal McKellen can do it, and there are other old actors in their 80s who can do it. I don't really like doing that anymore. I can do it, but I don't really like doing it. I like doing it once and then moving on. So yeah, being on a film set and all the people on the film set and that whole thing, and it's it's the especially if you're on a big movie, really huge budget movie, and you're surrounded by millions and millions of pounds worth of set and costume and people who are doing it at the top of their game, and you're part of a team. You're part of this team of major professionals. It's sort of military. It's almost a military exercise. It's great. I love it.
Now, David has a lot to contend with. He's had issues growing up with his father, Phil, with Kenton and their arguments, and with his children. Not only are you exhausted, perhaps, but you've come up, or David came up with a phrase that is so memorable, it's on my T-shirt, for those of you watching, lesbian mentor. Tim, that was That was such a unique phrase. When you read about it, what did you think when you saw it in the script?
Well, it took me by surprise, really, because, you only get the scripts kind of, maybe a week or 2 weeks beforehand. Yes. I don't even know that David knows what a mentor is, really. He probably said it as though, there's this sort of thing that sounds good. But, as I say, we are at the mercy of the script writers. So, you just do it. And I love it. And the reaction that we got to it is just fantastic. But, the nature of the Archers is that it does encompass so many different things. And it, in the past, after the war, when it started, it was all about getting the English farmer back to efficiency again, after the fact that we couldn't feed ourselves after the war because of the old-fashioned farming techniques. And the reason, almost the raison d'etre of the Archers was propaganda, to broadcast to farmers to tell them how to do it. And since then, it's changed. It doesn't do that anymore, but it does do things like, talking about what's his name? Rob Titchener. The whole coercive control. Well, there's a thing that lots of people didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
And there are talk, of women saying, I hadn't realised that I was in that relationship until I listened to the Archers and went, my God, that's me. Yeah. And I know that there's a woman who got hold of Felicity, who plays Ruth, and told her she'd saved her life because she had a lump, which she didn't think anything about. And only after listening to the episode about Ruth's breast cancer did she go and get it investigated. And it was, yes, you just caught it in time, otherwise she'd have died. So, the programme has been, on many occasions, a lifesaver. And, in the past, things like with farmers would say to me, God, if you hadn't told me about I should have sprayed for warble fry, I'd have lost my crop, and we'd be on the street, things like that. It's important, it is. And we realise that, and we're very privileged to be a part of it.
It's incredible. It just keeps moving with the times and is just constantly helping people and informing people, as well as being a great show to listen to.
Yeah.
It must be really special to be part of that.
It is, yeah, it really is.
Fantastic.
Well, we're about to get onto the Facebook questions, if that's okay. We've got a lot of questions, but very quickly, I just got one other question, and that's, if you couldn't play the part of David Archer, but you could choose any other part, who would you want to play?
Oh, I think Brian, probably. Yeah. I think Brian. It's such a great part, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. And Charles is so good at it. Yeah. I wouldn't be able to do it any better than him, but I would like to be able to play that part. It's great fun.
Oh, great.
I mean, almost any of them, really. I'd be perfectly happy to play anybody, but I think, not Nigel Pargeter. I think probably not.
No.
I think it'd be a bit of a quiet part now.
Yes. Well, as I say, we've got lots and lots of questions from the Facebook group, so answer them in as much detail as you wish. Katie, you've got the first one.
So, first question's come in from Sally, and she wants to know, how much do you charge for renting the barn out?
To you, Sally.
Very good.
I honestly, I don't know.
Yeah.
Sally, darling, you can have it for a tenner, okay? Because it's you. Only because it's you.
Fantastic.
But anybody else, probably 300 quid, something. Yeah. Grand, maybe 1,000. I have no idea.
An amount.
Yeah, an amount.
The next question is from Nikki, who asks, who would win if Dave and Kenton had a fight?
Oh, Dave. Oh, God almighty. Kenton's a wimp. David would knock him. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have had verbal fights. It hasn't come to fisticuffs yet, but no. I mean, well, I suppose I'm basing that on the fact that I'm 6'3" and kind of, I've got a fair amount of upper body strength because I'm a swimmer. Kenton isn't. Put it that way. No, I think David would win.
Brilliant. I've got a question from Helen. What do you really feel about Vince now?
Don't trust him. Yeah. Ever. I don't think I'll ever trust him, because he's come good, and you think, oh, Vince isn't such a bad bloke. And we had a scene where kind of Dave was going, oh, Vince is all right, really, and they kind of got on, and then he shafted him, fairly soon afterwards. So I don't think he would ever trust him at all. But, David is a nice guy, and he always looks for the best in people. And he's very easily persuaded. That's the other thing. He's not, he hasn't got much side, David. He tends to believe what he's presented with, and that's why I believed Vince, who was trying to shaft him. I think that's the answer to that. He will never trust Vince.
Thank you. The next question is from Claire, who asked, what similarities have you found between The Archers and The Thick of It?
There's a line in The Thick of It which would never, ever come up in The Archers, which I won't even repeat here because it's too filthy. But I suppose there are kind of similarities with old Cliff Lawton. I did love doing that. I mean, I am the first 15 minutes of episode 1 of The Thick of It. With being roasted. Yeah, no. I mean, this is the thing. We can't do this because as an actor, there aren't relationships between the different parts that you play. There is no really relationship between Cliff Lawton and David Archer, but I've played them both in different ways. I remember it so well because Peter. He's, the sweetest and loveliest guy, and we had the best time doing it. The moment the camera turned over, he turned into this rabid animal, his eyes half closed, and his chin went up.
So my next question from Sarah is, first of all, she said, David is my Archer's crush.
Oh,
After much thought, my question is, some people seem, inexplicably, to find David a bit slow and boring. What would you say to these misguided souls of their erroneous opinions?
Well, again, he never used to be, and somehow or other the script writers have included this idea of being slow and boring, and I don't know where it comes from. And it's still quite difficult to fight against that when you're presented with lines that are slow and boring. It's very difficult to present them in a kind of an intellectual and interesting and funny way. I can only do so much with it. So the person to ask is not me, but is to ask the script writers. And, it could be a phase that David's going through. He's depressed. Maybe he's depressed. People do get depressed, and become boring. And he might kind of come out of it and suddenly turn up with a guitar, and entertain the troops and be a stand-up comic. Stranger things have happened.
But Tim, when you're playing David, you do make me laugh because often if you're dealing with your mother, that you do this sigh that's like a teenage sigh where you just and I love that how it contradicts with other things that David says. I just think it's brilliantly done. I do enjoy the sighs.
He's funny, he always has been funny. He's got a good sense of humor, David. He really has. And he's always had a sunny disposition. So as I say, you really do have to ask them as what writes it as to why this kind of grumpiness and seriousness comes across, because he's not underneath it. It's only when he's on the radio that he's like that. Put it that way. Yeah. The moment the microphones are off, he's the laugh a minute boy.
The next question is from Hannah.
Hello,
who asked how many audiobooks you've recorded and which was your favourite. She says that she was pleasantly surprised when she started listening to I Never Knew That About London, that you were narrating it. A great book with interesting narration.
Oh, thank you. I've done loads of them. I can't remember, but it's in the, I don't know, in the teens, in 40 or 50 or something like that, probably. But the one that I liked best was only about 2 years ago. I did Oliver Twist, and I had not read Dickens since I was at school, and it made me go, what have I been missing out on? It's wonderful. Dickens writes so well. And Oliver Twist is such a great book because it's got all these characters in it, and you get, the great thing about audiobooks is you get to do all the voices. And I look at an audiobook as being a radio play in which I'm playing all the parts. But it's so beautifully written. There's a bit where where Oliver walks through London, and he walks through Smithfield Market, and you can smell it, and you can feel it, and you can hear it. The way the descriptive passages in there, you don't need a movie, It's just, and because you didn't have movies, and you had books, and you had people who could write about making you feel like you were there, and it's like time travel. I absolutely loved it, and my favourite. And then on the back of that, they asked me to do a book called written by Disraeli called Sybil, which is one of the most tedious books I have ever read in my life. And I said, oh, okay, I'll do it because I'm into Dickens now, and I go, 19th century. And then you suddenly go, this is the difference between a writer and a politician. And weirdly, I was doing a thing the other day, and this guy came up to me on the station platform. He said, I've just been listening to one of your audiobooks. I said, which one? He said, the Disraeli one. I went, oh, God, man, did you listen to it? He said, no, I really liked it. It was fascinating. I went, oh, well, you know.
Very good.
Please, somebody, anyway.
My next question is from Justine, and she said, do you like lasagna?
I love lasagna. No, I think, yes, she burnt it, I think, didn't she? It was, I was trying to be polite about it.
Yeah.
Yes. No, it's easily done with lasagna. You've got to get it right.
The next question is from Heather, who asked, does Tim have a bent for battered leather jackets and 70s, 80s rock?
I've got a battered leather jacket, which I actually wore because it sounded right when we were doing those scenes with the battered leather jacket. I used to wear it in the 70s, and I would be so embarrassed to wear it now because it's archetypally 70s. But 70s rock, yeah, absolutely. It's the best decade for rock and roll, best decade for music, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I was born in 1953, and so that's my era. Absolutely, all of it, and anything in the 70s. And if I'm listening to the radio, I'll always tune into the 70s channel. It's the best decade. Definitely. I mean, I'm biased, obviously, but yeah.
So you're about 6 years older than David, then?
Yeah,
Is
I
that
am
right?
exactly 6 years older.
Yeah.
I'm eternal. That's the great thing about David is I have eternal youth. He's just a sprite in his 60s, you know.
So my next question's from Georgie, and I think you've kind of answered it already, but having been born on a sheep station, were you destined to play a farmer in The Archers?
Well, there you go. Yeah, I think we probably have answered that. So, no. It was pure luck. I did, as you say, I won this prize from drama school. And you're right, I did come second, but then the guy who won it, he turned it down, and so I got it. So I thank him. And again, I do know his name, and I can't remember it. But as a result of that, I got on the radio rep and an equity card, and 6 months with the radio repertory company. And from that, got the invitation to audition for David Archer. And I just happened to get that part. And it's the nature of the beast with actors is, you get that one part and it changes your life. And it's happened to so many people. Or you don't get that part and it doesn't change your life. That's happened to more people, And there are plenty of things that I've been up for which would have changed my life and I didn't get. So I'm very grateful for the one that has, because it's been great, 42 years being the same character. I mean, people don't get to do that and have a little bit of security in their lives. It's lovely. But yeah, I don't think I got it because I was born on a sheep station.
The next question is from Dawn, who asked, do you think Elizabeth's relationship with Vince will help you to put past differences behind you and move forward?
These are terrifically good questions, I have to say. They're really, really thoughtful. No. No, I don't think so, really. No.
Great.
I've got a question from Ivory. How does he master the underlying evil and menace of the character David?
I think it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, that one.
Well, it takes an enormous skill, to do that, to disguise the evil. I get to play evil characters. I do a lot of computer games. And I've got this character called Victor Saltzpyre in a game called Vermintide and Vermintide 2. And I've been playing him for 9 years, and I'm bigger in the States as Victor Saltzpyre than I am as David Archer. And Victor Saltzpyre is the witch hunter. And Victor Saltzpyre has a voice like that, which is a mixture of evil Sir Ian McKellen and Kenneth Williams. He tends to fade out rather a lot at the end. And it's just a complete joy to play. So it's Victor where he's got my inner baddie. And you can get, you're doing video games, you get to be able to say the word evil. It's not evil, it's evil.
That's great.
One of the reasons why you join up is to say, evil.
The next question is from Angie, who asks if you, in real life, own a Barber jacket, and is it pronounced Eagle Wellies? Sorry if I've not pronounced that correctly, but do you own a Barber jacket and Wellies?
I've got a very, very old Barber jacket, which is one of those long ones that goes over the knee. And I've got a wife in the background.
So, we won't take much longer. Sorry, we're nearly done.
Come and say hello. Say hello.
Yes! Is this Judy of the Hat Designs?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, hello, Judy. How lovely to meet you.
Hello.
Sorry, I was just coming to get her.
Sorry.
Yeah. No,
Your hats are wonderful, by
Yeah,
the way.
they are brilliant.
Been having a sneaky look.
are you a legend in what state in America?
Oh, I'm famous in Kentucky.
Famous in Kentucky, she was told us recently.
Love it.
Because you did a joint book launch at one point, didn't you?
We did, yeah.
Yeah.
This has got Colin the camper van in the back there, you see.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, do what we can. Yes, I should have had your book up as well, Judy. I'm sorry, I apologise.
We'll have to re-record the whole thing.
Yes.
So I've got this Barber jacket, which is one of those full-length ones that goes down over the knee, and I made the mistake once of bringing it into the studio to wear it for sound effect, and it stayed there. So it's been there for something like 20 years, and because I'd sort of forgotten about it, and I was looking around in the studio and went, hang on, wait a minute, that's my jacket, and it's used as sound effect for everybody now. So if it's a Barber jacket, it's mine.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Do you get extra money for that? What a shame. Got a question from Martin.
Yes.
What are the best and worst scenes you've done in The Archers to date?
Well, I mean, there's quite a few. But the ones that stand out, as I've mentioned, is the one that I have put up on the website, which is that thing where he finds out that Ruth is, in love with Sam. I think that really stand out. The other one, which is an extraordinary one, was when I turned up and they hadn't sent the script. Something had happened; it hadn't arrived in the post, so I hadn't got the script, so I didn't know what it was about. And we were running short, we were running late, and so we didn't do a read through. And so we literally sight read the scene, and literally in front of the microphone, what was broadcast was what we were reading out, and never having seen it before. And we came into me and Felicity came into the studio, and there was a woman there, an actress, who was playing the part of a doctor, and there we were, and we went through this thing, and the doctor said, "I'm terribly sorry to have to tell you, Mrs. Archer, but you've got breast cancer." And so the reactions from both of us were absolutely real. There was no acting going on whatsoever. I was going, my God, and Flick burst into tears for real. She really, really did. And it's the most convincing scene you'll ever hear because it wasn't acted; it was kind of for real. So that really stood in the memory banks. Oh God, I loved the floods. The flood was great. We had a whole week which was concatenated into kind of each episode. It was in real time over 7 days, so it just kind of went on. And we were standing around in these huge, enormous, great buckets of water with our wellies on. Oh, and wellies, yeah. No, I've got the old champignon, chambeau wellies, the green ones. Yeah, I got those.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, there have been so many. And favourite ones, ones I didn't like. Well, there's the whole thing about cancer. That was pretty horrible. I mean, one of the things that we used to happen to us is that every cloud has a silver lining, and so whenever there was some terrible disease like mad cow disease, or any of those, all of us go, "Ooh, that'd be a few episodes." We know that we would get it at Brookfield, and then we would have to kind of go and have lots of episodes to kind of deal with that. And, you have to learn things like bovine spongiform encephalopathy, in order to say it as though it just trips off the tongue.
Very good.
I've got a question from Derek, and he wants to know who's your favourite musician/band?
Oh, cool, blimey. Well, I was a Bowie freak. I mean, for a long time, I was, really early adopter of David Bowie, and I could see his greatness right in the days of Ziggy Stardust. And then when I was at university, I was big on West Coast American music, like Doobie Brothers and Steely Dan, and all that lot. I've recently suddenly realised how much I completely love the Beatles, but I hadn't really realised it until I discovered there's a Dutch tribute band called the Analogues, and they took it upon themselves to recreate the studio albums that were never played live on stage, these are multi-track albums that took years to produce, and they do them live on stage, and when you close your eyes you honestly can't tell the difference between them. They are astonishing. Honestly, just Google the Analogues, and once you've listened to one, if you're a Beatles fan, and the thing about us, my generation with the Beatles, is we know every single nuance of every note and every part of the singing, and they get it all. It's all accurate. It's absolutely wonderful. And then you think, my God, this music is astonishingly good. It blows everybody else out of the park. Nobody wrote music like the Beatles did. Nobody. I mean, and that includes, all the greats. It's our modern classical music, Beatles, in a way that, Elton John and anybody else that you could mention, they get blown out of it. Nobody comes up with those original things. And they're all so different. You go from one track to the next, and they're, why did you go from that? How did you get that?
Variety.
Yeah, I think probably, having been a Bowie freak, I think now I'd say it's the Beatles forever.
Well, Tim, we come to the final question from the Facebook group, and this is from Max.
Yes.
Max says, hello, Tim. It has been occasionally noted that David has been involved in the unfortunate deaths of 2 people and 1 animal,
Yes.
Nigel, Jethro Larkin and a badger. What was your reaction to hearing that David would be partially, somewhat, entirely responsible for each of the said incidents?
Okay. Now you have to realise the fact that we are complete mercenaries. Mm-hmm. So that anything that involves getting lots of episodes is good news, because we don't have a retainer. We are only paid per episode. So if somebody says, "Oh, you've got a thing where Jethro dies," Tim's first reaction, not David's, is, "Great, how many episodes is it going to take to die?" It was very, very sad. As for Nigel Pargeter. You know the whole story about that. I did this scene with Graham. And there we were standing in front of a microphone, and he went, "David," and then he went, like that. And they decided, and he did it very accurately, that he'd fallen off Grey Gables, but they decided it wasn't dramatic enough, and so they elongated his scream, and so they made it longer than he actually recorded it. And then the complaints came in and said that if you do the feet per second, he would have fallen to the size of Westminster Cathedral. So that's become a kind of a meme that they got it wrong. It wasn't Graham's fault, and Graham got it absolutely right. He went, "Ah!" like that. No, they thought it needs to be more dramatic. And then the badger, I'm a farmer. Get over it. It's a badger. It's going to spread tuberculosis. Of course, he shot the thing. That was David's attitude to it.
Well, Tim, very finally, we have a question from the last cast member we interviewed, which of course was the fabulous Ryan Kelly, who plays Jazza. And I don't know if he posed this question a little to cause a bit of trouble with you, but anyway, his question is, Tim, what's your favourite sport and which team would you support?
Scotland, Ryan, because I don't want to get a backlash from Ryan. He's a hard man. Ryan. Scotland, mate. Scotland the brave. Scotland forever. Hey. No, I'm an England fan through and through, I'm afraid. Sorry. I don't have any clubs. I love my rugby, and so England rugby, that's my team. England rugby team. But to be absolutely truthful, if Scotland are playing almost anyone else, I'll be a Scot for that time.
Okay.
Yeah, because I love Scotland. And Scotland against Ireland's always difficult because I always support the Irish as well. And it's like the Olympics, you know, you see the Irish guy who won the 800 metres free out of the blue, this Whiffen. What a swim that, because I'm a swimmer, that's the thing, I love the swimming. And this guy came out of left field, beat the Americans and the Aussies, and there he is, this Irish fella. And they got to the medal ceremony, and there they all are standing there, these big jocks, you know, kind of these swimming jocks and everything. And there's Whiffen in the middle of it with these thick glasses on. Like, good on you, mate. Good on you.
So, Tim, when you first heard there was going to be a flood, were you like, yes, I'm fine, I can do the swimming?
Swimming and saving everybody. Exactly.
Well, it's just been such an absolute treat to talk to you. Tim
You
Bentinck,
too.
thank you so very much for joining us.
It's
Thank
been an
you.
absolute pleasure. Thank you for asking.